Very big welcome to our webinar, where you'll get independent insights from the team here at ECO, insights into the 41st board meeting of the Green Climate Fund. And it's a great pleasure to welcome you here today, along with my colleagues, Beverley Salmon, Zsofia Kovacs, and Aurelio Padovese. So welcome to three guests on this live webinar. For almost 25 years, our consultants have supported and guided clients to achieve low carbon climate resilient development. We do this through catalyzing systemic transformation to establish strong foundations for impact. We'd love it if you could introduce yourself in the chat, whether you're joining us live from LinkedIn or whether you're joining on YouTube. Please, in the comments, just introduce yourself, your name, your where you're from. We'd love to see you there. For my side, my name is Grant Ballard-Tremeer. I'm the founder of ECO. Set it up going on 25 years ago. I'm an engineer by background, but I've spent a lot of time focusing on organizational growth and also the consulting work. So we'll now get some intros from the team here. Beverley, shall we go first to you? Just who are you, where you're from? A short intro would be fantastic. Please go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, thank you, Grant. And hi to everyone joining us. Yeah, my name is Beverley Salmon. I'm based in London in the UK. I'm an urban resilience expert by background, but now head of consulting at ECO, leading the team across the variety of work that we undertake.
Fantastic. Thank you. Just a reminder, please do introduce yourself in the comments. Zsofia, how about you next?
Hello, hi everyone. I'm Zsofia Kovacs, principal consultant at ECO. I'm an economist by background, and I have worked in international development for the past 15 years, focused on private sector development, climate, and at ECO, I'm mainly focusing on the private sector portfolio that we have, so working with private organization on climate project development.
Okay, thank you very much. And Aurelio, over to you.
Yeah, hello, Grant. Thank you for the invitation. Hello, everyone. I'm Aurelio Padovese, a Brazilian, a newcomer in ECO. Start work at ECO last December, but I have a background working with restoration programs in Brazil, Latin America, and recently I finalized my PhD with the topic of related to social innovation on forest and landscape restoration. It helps a little bit to look at the ECO projects and together with the colleagues have some of the insights that we are going to present later. Thank you.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you very much, Aurelio. And we've got online, William, you've put some comment there. Thank you very much for kicking off the ball there. William, based in the UK. Ben, it's great to see you. I'm from RMI. Super to see you here. Paul, a warm welcome. Joining us from Nairobi. Fantastic to see you. And hi, Miedrag. Please do keep the introductions going. We'd be very pleased to hear from you during the event. All right, so let's quickly get into the agenda. Firstly, we're going to kick off with our senior consultant, Aurelio Padovese, who will be diving into our recent GCF insight that is focused on collaborative networks for climate innovation at the local level. And then after that, we'll be unpacking some key issues that emerged, some key observations from the recent board meeting of the Green Climate Fund that happened 2 weeks ago now in Sondo. Beverley and Zsofia will lead us through that. They both were at the board meeting, so we'll get it right there from active participants. So please do participate as we go along. Fantastic to see you, Isaac, here. Ignacia, warm welcome. Alex, great to see you here. Hello, Karabi, always fantastic to see you here. Welcome, Aaron, as well. Great to see all of you attending. So let's jump then in through to the first session. But I just want to start by encouraging you to participate as we go along. Do write comments or questions, observations in the chat. We'll be monitoring those. We'll do our best to address them live during the session. But if we don't manage to, we'll also catch up on that as well by sending out an email through our latest thinking newsletter. And we've put a huge, great QR code in the middle of the screen, sorry, covering up Zsofia and Bev a little bit. If you scan that QR code, it'll take you to the sign-up page for our latest thinking newsletter. We don't share your details with anyone, and it's our way of keeping in touch with you. Don't send very many emails, but a few notifications and such like. All right. Hey, Devonshire. Hello, Zara. Nalan, sorry if I mispronounced, from Nairobi. Fantastic to see you here. From Moldova. Delrin. Tony from the UK. And Honey. Hey, it's been some time since we were in touch. Nice to hear from you. All right, so let's get going. We're going to now go into the GCF Insight. We have Aurelio, who's going to lead us through this presentation. Looking forward to it. Now, this is a really important topic, I think. You know, at the moment, these days, there's a lot of division in the world. There's a lot of disagreements, and everything that happens seems to create divisions between people. But if we're going to move forward into a sustainable future, we need to learn to collaborate. We need to be working together to collaborate to reach goals where we have a future that is safe and equitable for all. Collaborative networks is one way of doing that. And so we think this is a really important topic for now. And Aurelio, over to you as you guide us through our GCF Insight publication. We've given, I'll put on a little link in the top to begin with that will lead you to our insights. And from there, you can access this GCF Insight on climate finance and collaborative networks. Over to you, Aurelio.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Grant. It's a pleasure to share some of the key insights of this publication. As you said, we are living in a moment with intense transformation, and we believe that a smooth way to go through this transformation is collaboration, is through collaborative networks. I also would like to thank the colleagues that help us to organize this event, and thank you all for following us in this live event. This publication, together many other publications, reports, are available in our website, so you can come here and check it out. So let's get started. So there are two key questions guiding the reflections and insights explored in this publication. The first one is, how can global climate finance institution as a GCF accelerate the transformative change? And what will be the role of collaborative networks? What is that? What's collaborative network in this process? So bringing our insights on these questions, we need to first clarify a few concepts. What is transformative change? I'm not going to go deep that, but just present a briefly a view. Collaborative networks and the donut economics, which I know probably you already heard about and you know about that. So about transformative change, is similar to the paradigm shift, a concept very much used in GCF projects. And according to the IPBS, it means a fundamental reorganization of the entire system necessary for the conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity, good quality of life, and sustainable development. This is a very deep transformation. We are not talking about just technology, just economy, just policy instruments. It's everything. It's a new change. Here's is an example. This figure shows an example of a transformative change. So the current system causing landscape degradation and social inequality to a desirable situation of a system able to support socially inclusive landscape restoration. We know that this process doesn't happen like that. Unfortunately, there's no silver bullet, but there are many events along this bumping way that we call like chemistry reaction, catalysts of this reaction. And this is an important thing that we are going to come back later. The second key concept is the collaborative network. Collaborative network is a dynamic system connecting diverse entities, people, organization, they can be geographically dispersed and may differ from their worldviews, their perspectives, the scale of actions and objectives. So, but despite these differences, they exchange knowledge and share resources to achieve a common goal. So what differs a collaborative network from a fruitful partnership is an inclusive governance system dedicated to support locally led solutions, prompt to incubate social ecological innovations. So, and the other concept here we bring here that is important as well is the model, is the donut economy, which is a model that critique the traditional DDP-based growth paradigm that often neglects the crucial indicators for quality of life and human well-being, such as ecosystem service. So two things that I would like to highlight in that is that the safe and just space for humanity happens in the middle, in the donut. So below that, so under the social foundation, it shows that here in this area, then basic needs are not meted, like food, health, education, housing. And in the external of this economic development donut, it is going to be critical for the planet degradation. So here represents the pollution, oil consumption, all the activities that jeopardize the health of the planet. So ideally, we should be developing our economics or social activities inside of this donut. And here comes our first insight that I'm happy to share with you all, which is the role of the collaborative network, which is basically, through this collaborative network, we can support activities or group of people, vulnerable people that are nowadays living in this deprivation, critical human situation, from injustice places, the situations we are seeing related to climate change, but beyond that, the social issues connect to that, to bring them to this space. And also this collaborative network represent for those white and dots here, also bring the economic activities that are out of this ecological ceiling to be inside of this fair and sustainable development region expressed by the donut. So in summary, collaborative networks can serve as an essential bridge between the GCF and the local initiatives by creating an ecosystem of innovation that connects stakeholders and empower communities. So going back to the second question, or insights about a collaborative network, is that these networks can act as a body supporting the sustainable economy development, bringing economic activities into the circle of just and sustainable activities. So in this sense, collaborative networks serve as an essential bridge between GCF and local initiatives, creating innovations ecosystems that connect stakeholders and empower communities. So here we can see some insights into about how this global climate fund finance institutions like GCF could support these collaborative networks to bring everyone inside the economic donut. So some insights is related to decentralized funding mechanisms, empower local communities to take ownership of their natural resources, like instruments connect to microfinance, and also actions, projects, activities supporting capacity building grants. So those are some insights to help us to respond to this question. So one example that I would like to bring here about how these global climate finance institutions are supporting local actions is this project, empower women groups to build resilience to climate impact in southwest Angola. It's the focus of this, the paradigm shifts or the transformative change view of this project is capacity building through actions, empower women, promoting actions to train them and also to improve their communication, their network is going to lead them to face adaptation and to be more resilient facing the climate change. So this project focuses on it creates women-led climate change centers, and in the centers, these women, they are receiving training, they are exchanging knowledge, and an innovative idea of this project is the micro grant, which can lead those empowered women to develop their activities to be more to an entrepreneur in the climate agenda. This is how is one example about how ECO is supporting those collaborative networks to sustain and develop. It connected them with these global financial institutions. So I'm going to finish here, bringing one of the phrases that one of the thoughts that was sharing with us during the consultancy about the role of collaborative networks. And according to one of the responses, they are essential for bringing the gap between GCF funding and local initiatives while scaling transformative climate solutions. Thank you very much. I would also like to thank everyone who participated of this publication.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Aurelio. Much appreciated. So we've received in the chat an interesting thought, insight from Artyom, reasonably provocative as well. What do you make of this? There's a lot of thought going into visualizing concepts and paradigms. I don't know if he's intending this as a comment on our visualization here, but not much into real action and funding of the needs where they're really required. How would you respond to that?
Well, thank you for the question. It's very provocative, and I would say that it's important to have a reflection and to have a clear view of how things work theoretically before to go to practice. That's why we work so hard on theory of change, mechanism. We develop project. We think about how could be this transformation before, and the theoretical background is very important for us to support this. Of course, that during the implementation, you have to have adaptive management instruments that help you to understand what's happening in the context and quickly adapt that to the situation. But I would say it's important to have this background to support our actions, because also help our narrative, help to build a narrative and bring others together to a collective action.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. We're looking at concepts and paradigms for action, essentially. It's how do we do the action to make best use of the money that is flowing. And you gave the example of the Crew Angola project, which is one of them. I covered it on a LinkedIn Live not too long ago. I'll share the link to it as we go, if I can. The idea there is that the collaborative networks support the change that we're looking for through those communities, supporting women's empowerment in this part of Angola. And it's actual action. So the thinking is not a long thinking, it's a thinking to plan something to go to action, right?
Yeah, no, and it's very important to have this this provocation of action. Yeah, this is very important, because this is something that we are always thinking. Of course, it's important to get inspiration in the theory, but the practical action with what really changes, right? What each promote changes. But the balancing between these two is fundamental, because when we generate reflections and we register them and we communicate them, we also can inspire other people to follow more or less the same ideas or the same principles.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Aurelio. I hope that was useful. We see collaborative networks as a really foundational tool, as you said right at the beginning, to bring together the different stakeholders that are needed to catalyze and to support local action. And you talked about a number of different tools and steps that are there, including collaborative sort of enhanced direct access, which is one of the tools that the GCF can use, and we think should be used a whole lot more. So thank you very much, Aurelio. All right, on to the discussion last board meeting. Please do keep the... what I would like to do now is just to make the transition is to just emphasize that these views that colleagues Beverley and Zsofia will present are our own views. They are observations of the board meeting. They're not intended to be comprehensive. We're not trying to cover every single topic that is there. Yeah, well, it's our viewpoints, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on them. So please do that. I think there was quite some dramatic and, for me, big issues that emerged in the board meeting. So over to you, Beverley and Zsofia. I'm looking forward to getting this update.
Thank you, Grant. And we had a few slides. I don't know if you want to put those onto the screen.
Yep, we're going to put them on.
So yeah, I'm just going to talk about a couple of the really kind of high-level elements of the board that occurred over the last over the 4 days during B.41. The kind of summary here, but yeah, the first one is the regional presence. So this was something that was agreed at this board. The previous board introduced the 4 new regional directors. So they're the different regions, but then also complemented by the director, of course, of the private sector facility as well. So those 5 core directors taking more of an active role at various different stages of the project approval process. And yeah, through this board ratifying a regional presence for each of those directors. It seemed a kind of trend and a discussion from the kind of background of the GCF around the strategy really cementing strongly in a country-first focus. And kind of how this then develops and is taken up will be interesting to see as the new the new strategy is kind of rolled out, not least with the new kind of concept note development, as well as the kind of development and improvement to country programs, and the kind of the strengthening of links between the NDA and actual projects. So yeah, regional presence was one core area of discussion. Another one was also the review of the accreditation process. So it seems potentially that the project-specific assessment approach, so the PSAA, is unlikely to continue after its pilot, which is scheduled to end March 2026. But the approach to that is informing potential changes to the broader accreditation approach, and it's still under consultation. And so, but the goal is looking towards a shorter time frame, a 9-month cycle for accreditation. This is also linking here to the next point you can see, which is the reduction in the project development cycle, also to 9 months. Which was a kind of key element of the kind of introduction to the board meeting, and the kind of importance of reducing that timeline in terms of project development. But our experience within ECO, these timeframes developing projects can take a lot longer than that, and so we'd be very interested to see where that kind of pressure comes and how the projects can be developed within that 9-month window. Yeah, and then another area of kind of high-level consideration was just around the portfolio trends. So are we seeing kind of sectoral shifts in some of the projects that are being approved through over the years since the start? There seems to be a slightly more kind of direction in towards kind of social protection, health and food, as well as lots of kind of conversations around fragile and conflict affected states. So how to support more active projects coming through for approval from those areas, linked also to a focus for direct access entities rather than international accredited entities. And also partly linked as well to this regional presence is kind of right-sizing the geographical portfolio balance. So those was just some key kind of takeaways from the conversations that I found, and I'll hand over to Zsofia to talk through some of the other points that were at the board as well.
Thank you, Bev. This was my first GCF board, so it was incredibly insightful to be there, meeting with all the different accredited entities who had projects put forward to the board, listening in all the side conversations and side events that were also happening in parallel with the board discussions. So it was a great pleasure to be there. Possibly the most awaited part of the board discussions are typically the funding proposals, so the approvals. And I have brought a few stats and like to give a few insights around and observations that we have made while attending the board. So in total, 11 projects were approved at B.41 of a total of $689 million in GCF funding. And the total project funding, including co-financing, was around $1.4 billion. 2 of the projects were from private sector accredited entities. They are typically loan or equity projects. They were LBA and Mirova. And if you're looking at the graph on the right, it depicts the split between GCF funding and co-financing, effectively the amount of GCF funding will leverage from private and public sources. So if you look at the first bar, the private sector projects, as you might expect, the GCF funding is much lower in proportion compared to the co-financing. It's about a 1-to-4 split. Whereas on public sector project, it's much more even, or even GCF funding takes more than half, so about 58% of the project, of total project financing. And on an overall portfolio level of the 11 projects that were approved at this last board, it's almost even between GCF funding and all the other co-financing that have been put in, both from public and private sources. The GCF's current strategic plans, 2024 and 27, outlines a few areas that they are targeting when it comes to approving projects. And they are focusing on adaptation. I mean, there's also mitigation project, or rather cross-cutting project that were approved at the last board. There were 6 adaptation-only projects, and then the 5 were cross-cutting between adaptation and mitigation. So that's because of the strategic drive of putting forward projects that have a strong adaptation element or fully adaptation focus. Other strategic priorities are the sector focus, and at this round it was very much in line with that. Food systems, ecosystems, sustainable ecosystems, and early warning systems were the top of the most common themes of the approved project. There are other sectors that are in the GCF strategy, like, for example, energy, infrastructure, built environment, energy, and related to energy efficiency. These were less this time. I mean, as you can see, there's very much adaptation focus, so less on that would focus on mitigation. And the other thing that also Beverley mentioned is local and regional focus, bringing in direct access entities. The strategy says that the GCF wants to multiply or double at least the direct access entities that receive GCF funding. These are the locally or regionally based accredited entities. There were 2 of these projects approved at this last board. The PSAA process that was also mentioned by Beverley, this is the project-specific accreditation approach. So that was this currently is a pilot, and it's likely that it will not continue beyond March 2026. Was brought in so that the accreditation or project proponents could put forward a project without pre-accreditation. So, and they will only get accreditation for their projects, making it much less timeline, shorten the timeline, and also making it possible to go through a bit more streamlined process. And 2 projects, Agra, Mirova, were the project-specific accredited entities that have project approved. And multi-country versus single country. So they were quite, it's very typical to have a lot of multi-country projects. It was quite clear that that was the approach followed by many accredited entities. So 5 of them were multi-country and 6 single country. Out of that, 4 were in Africa. And then other single country projects were in Mexico and Serbia as well. And just to moving on. So as I mentioned earlier in the introductions, at ECO, my focus is on the private sector-led project development with the GCF. So that was kind of my lens of looking at the different event or attending the different events during the board meeting. And one interesting one was with ITAP. ITAP is the Independent Technical Advisory Panel that helps, that comes in at the last stage of the review process. And that's just before the board approval. And they have given a presentation on what they are looking at when they are assessing private sector projects, how what sort of positive and negative approaches they have seen, and what they would like to see as they as the private sector projects are put forward. It was mentioned that they are some of them are very ambitious in terms of the leverage targets, so the amount of private sector finance that the GCF funding will be able to mobilize, which is an GCF investment criteria. So without evidence, so what the ITAP likes to see is to provide rigorous research and evidence on how this is going to be, how the capital will be raised, and to show a track record. If the private sector entity can show a strong track record that can substantiate this claim. A lot of discussion about risk sharing and return. Obviously, the regional and thematic and sector requirements will very much inform the design of and the risk sharing mechanism of any investment and any GCF funding. So then, and GCF is not looking for a uniform waterfall structure, but of course, if a concessionality is asked, it has to be well justified. Obviously, there's no scientific way of providing this justification, but it has to be strong enough and considered robust enough rationale by the ITAP to get through to approval. One thing that the GCF doesn't want to do is crowding out investment, so especially from the private sector. So if it's a crowded market, they don't typically come in with concessionality, but rather they want to emphasize the climate standards that the GCF will provide, and that would be GCF's additionality to the project. And one final point about technical assistance, which typically comes with the financial instrument, be it an equity or loan investment. They like to see this being coherently presented, integrated with the financial instrument. So sometimes when the investment manager brings in a third-party technical assistant provider, it's not always clear how the two will mutually, the TA and the financial component will mutually reinforce each other. So that has to be very clearly explained in the funding proposal. So I will stop here and hand it over to Grant to respond to your comments.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Zsofia. Really appreciate your insights and those of Beverley. We're getting some interesting questions and comments, and I've got a whole bunch of them myself too. So let's jump into that as quickly as we can. I'm going to bring Aurelio back too. I think there's some comments that are relevant to his presentation and, of course, his expertise. So please do continue to ask questions. If we can't manage to get to all of the questions in time, we will certainly respond to them on whichever platform you're writing to. We're getting questions on both YouTube and LinkedIn, and fantastic to see those. I would love just to make one point of clarification, just to check, Zsofia, what you were presenting about the ITAP, was this a report or a study that the ITAP carried out and presenting recommendations to the board, or give us a little bit of context about what those ITAP comments were?
This was a session inviting primarily the private sector to understand what are the assessment criteria that the ITAP normally uses to assess projects, looking at the 6 GCF investment criteria primarily. It wasn't a report that was presented. It's more like a discussion opportunity, and opportunity asking for those present to ask questions, Q&A session in a sense.
Okay,
yeah.
Fantastic, fascinating to see, because it's an independent body, isn't it, that is advising the board, so it's in that sort of relationship to it. Okay, so please do ask questions. We're getting a whole bunch coming in here. Let me just see how to structure them. Shall we start with the PSAA? So I'm going to just change the setting that we have here. Nalan on YouTube is asking this question, which perhaps did you try and avoid it, Bev, Zsofia? Any insights on the PSAA project that was withdrawn for board approval? How will you respond to that?
Who's going to go first? Yeah, I mean, it was certainly a point of kind of interest and conversation at the board. It was a private sector fund that withdrew just before, and yeah, the reasons behind it are not clear because it wasn't. There was no kind of shared detail, but there was some concern certainly from the civil society observers, CSO. Sorry. I'm saying that wrong. And they raised a number of concerns in advance to how the fund was put together, but also in terms of the track record of the fund.
Okay. Thank you. Zsofia, you want to add anything on to that?
Maybe just to say that given that the board is live stream, so everybody is publicly available, all the discussion are publicly available, the GCF is very determined to ensure that those discussions will be, so there's no any kind of potential backlash at that moment. So there was because these observations were made public beforehand. That was the decision that the GCF took.
Okay, well, so essentially, sorry, Bev, I probably were going to say the same thing. Is that the potential project sponsor, the organization withdrew, didn't they? It was they'd got input and insight, and then they stepped back, and
that's not to say they won't come back again.
Yeah, it might come back. Problems fixed. Yeah, and we don't have those details. Although they live stream the board meeting itself, they do have many conversations in corridors and some before the board meeting happens. And occasionally they go for a closed session. So we don't get everything. We're observers and sitting actually in the building next door to where the board meeting itself and rubbing shoulders with the with projects that are about to go into the board. Interestingly, from the civil society letter that is available publicly online about it, you mentioned, Bev, there are two aspects to it, but the one that stood out for me very strongly is the civil society organizations were seeing this as an abuse of the PSAA, a type of approach, and their perspective was that here is a fund that is being created even after GCF have entered the project into the pipeline, and it's they don't have the track record that's needed, and it's some way of shortcutting things. However, for private sector projects, it's very usual to create a special purpose vehicle, and you look to the founders of that special purpose vehicle in order to assess their credentials. Do they have what is needed? So there's some very interesting dynamics, and, well, as you said, there are things that we don't really know about it. All right. A burning question that Paul is asking, should we try and deal with this briefly, is the GCF and current US positioning. How do we see this?
Yeah, I mean, the GCF will be affected in terms of its. It was raised at the board that the amount of funding from the US to the GCF will be reduced, or they're not going to honour the rest of their commitment. That was flagged within the board meeting, and it was then taken to the next board, where they will have a look at what the implications are in terms of the pipeline for the new kind of budget.
Right. Essentially, 4 billion has been withdrawn at the very least from GCF's funds, right? But there was not a lot of discussion at the board meeting about this.
No, just the acknowledgement of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and even in the corridors, there weren't, a whole lot of buzz. It was as though, it's not something to discuss right now. We'll wait and see.
Exactly.
Putting my own words into it, but such like there's been some great networking taking place in the comments on LinkedIn. It's great to see that there. And Marta, based in Namibia, is one of them. This isn't a question, but she's just observing that, in fact, you know the neighborhood really well in Angola. And I thought that would be a good time to just add in a little QR code that you can see over there. The Crew Angola. This is not a link to Crew Angola. It's a link to the discussion that I had with a colleague of mine, Luisa Freitas, who was part of the team putting together that Crew Angola project. It's like an interview where we look into that project, see what we can learn from it, and it's the example that Aurelio gave in the project. So if you'd like to find out more about it, you can head to that page on LinkedIn. Look in the comments, you'll see the link to the actual project itself, but also hear the discussion that Luisa and I had about it. So hopefully that's useful to you, Marta. And yeah, good to see many of the other inputs, collaboration being offered by many different people. Gade, merci beaucoup. And Honey, I see you're arranging to connect with Marta, so that's really fantastic there. I would like to just step up a little bit in terms of the discussion around, I guess it's funding, and Karabi put the comment very specifically related to particular types of funding there. I don't know if we as a team actually have much to say about this. It's an observation that you've made there, Karabi. It is difficult to fund certain types of projects. I guess this is in India, but perhaps community development projects you can, but land resilience and watershed development and such like more difficult. Any thoughts? Yeah, Aurelio, please go ahead.
Yeah, it's really unbalanced, and when we go in the country level as well, we see the budget allocated to different for different ministers. It also reflect. I think we have seen some projects and some initiatives in some regions, for example, in Amazon, that is focused on bioeconomy. It's an approach to kind of try to connect initiatives that work in favor of upstanding forest and make a new economy, strengthen a new economy. This is it's very small yet. It's growing economy, but it's a way to highlight the importance of investments and bring partners again. The collaborative networks are very important to connect those initiatives and show to potential investors cases and attract more investments and make this approach related to restoration more interesting for big investors.
Right, thank you very much, Aurelio. Ben has asked a whole host of different questions. I'm going to try and display it, but I think it might get cut off. We don't have space. Oh no, we can get most of it here. We've already talked about some of the aspects of this, but he is focusing mostly on, firstly, the PSAA, the project-specific accreditation. Why is that being dropped? And secondly, this is part that's getting cut off, how the board's reacting to regionalization. Shall we start with PSAA? There's a few other comments about PSAA. I'm just going to switch to one from Paul, who is saying it's actually the best approach for involving the private sector, and it's coming to an end too soon. That's really important. And then when we come down to the sort of accreditation and regionalization, I'll also show some other inputs and some other questions. Let's talk about PSAA first. It's one of Ben's questions, and also this observation from Paul. Who wants to respond to this?
I can comment initially and then pass over to Zsofia. So I think it's important to say that it's not officially announced that it's not continuing. So just to make that very, very clear, it's a pilot that is due to end in March 2026. So that was the lifetime of the pilot. But it was implied that it would not be continued beyond the pilot, but that it will continue to take applications up until the end of at the end of that period. So we will still see PSAA projects coming through the board, I would imagine, for a number of years post the end of the March 2026. As to why, I only have my kind of own opinion from kind of what I've heard and been thinking about, which is the way GCF is very rigorous in its accreditation process and wants to keep that as a real kind of hallmark of the validity and kind of content of how the GCF is approaching and verifying entities. And so using the experience through the PSAA potentially to make improvements through this accreditation review process that they're going through. So hopefully it informs the new accreditation approach. Yeah, I think that's, like I say, it's just my opinion on wanting to remain kind of fairly rigorous and strong within their accreditation approach. I don't know if you...
Well, yeah, interesting. Zsofia, how do you see that? You're working on a lot of private sector projects, and there's some fear in the private sector, isn't there, around, has this got a future?
Yes, and completely agree with Paul's comment there, that it was a way for, and it is still a way for the private sector to get in, and because of the timeline that it takes to go through accreditation and then project development, that doesn't always align with the private sector. I would also emphasize that this is not 100% that it will end, so that is more like it's very likely, but it wasn't confirmed to happen. I would also say that the March 2026 is not, from what I understand, is also, and again, I would say it's not confirmed, is not going to be like a hard stop, because the projects that are already on the pipeline of being discussed with the GCF teams could go for approvals after the March 2026 timeline. So if they are already under preparation, they could still be approved. I would also just say that 2 were approved this board, 1 before. So that's only 3 out of the originally they were thinking about 30 to be approved through this process, and only got to 3. So obviously there's plenty of room for others to be to go through this if obviously the timeline aligns.
So what I'm hearing you saying, Zsofia, there is that the pipeline can still get into the pipeline up until March 2026, and they won't just cut off everything then, but the likelihood is continue processing those ones that already entered into a pipeline. But I guess these are things that we're hearing. There's not a hard and fast decision, as Bev said. They're trying to improve the accreditation process, and I guess they want to blend PSAA into that in some way. I'm not completely convinced by an argument of rigor, because why not just do rigor in the PSAA for that project? You know, if we take at face value, we don't see all the board documents, but if you take at face value the CSO's comments on that project that was withdrawn, it feels from that as though there wasn't the rigor of assessing this project. It just feels like it. We don't have the details. We don't know if there's the rigor and it's just a CSO perspective on it. But and there are possibly other things behind it. But that's that sounds like throwing baby out with the bathwater, right? You've got a problem with the mechanism, let's throw it out. But maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves, because this isn't a hard and fast decision yet, but it's looking like that will happen. In the interest of time, let's talk quickly about the regionalization one. Interestingly, my question has not yet come up from anyone, but let's talk a bit about regionalization. Hani has made the observation, and this is a bit of a complicated one. So the accreditation process isn't being dropped. Projects will still be accredited. They're trying to reform the accreditation process. But this idea that he's put in here is they're creating regional centers. Will the GCF accredit their own regional centers to take forward projects? I guess the answer is no, but there is really an intention for GCF to get more involved in sourcing projects. Shall we just talk about the GCF getting more involved in sourcing projects? If you're happy to go there, Bev, Zsofia, that's that idea that those partnerships, they would be creating them themselves in some way.
Yes, well, there was one part of the conversations at the board which we haven't touched on either in conversation or in our slides, which was around a new division called the Strategic Investments and Partnerships Division, which is born slightly out of the private sector facility, but is the remit is looking into exactly that, how GCF could have more of a more involvement in sourcing and co-financing potential opportunities. So yeah, that's definitely one tool that they're looking at using. Again, this was part of side discussions, wasn't part of the board. It's not formalized, I don't think yet, I'm not sure. But yeah, that's a tool.
Thank you. Ben has put, but it gets cut off when I display it, is how is the board reacting to the regionalization of the fund's operations and how GCF will execute it through regional centers and such like. Do we have insights in that? Because when I was at the board meeting last year in October, they were just saying we need to define how to do this.
Yeah, I think that's still a process that's ongoing. The regional presence at the moment was the point at the board meeting. So I think they're still thinking operationally. One of the other elements of discussion was changing the process of CIC 1, 2, and 3. So CIC 2 effectively becomes I'm not sure if this is an official name, but it's a PIN, so a project something investment.
Idea meeting, a project.
It was something project something memorandum.
Okay, memorandum. Okay, yeah, because it needs to be beyond idea, doesn't it? It's project implementation memorandum or something
like that. Yeah. So and those would be that sign off would happen with the regional directors. So everything up until effectively the concept note stage. So the kind of moving forward of a concept note to a full proposal will be held at the stage of the regional director or the private sector facility director.
Okay.
And we did see at the board this time the regional directors presenting the projects from their region, which we hadn't. That's not happened before.
No. It's normally Henry Gonzalez who's presenting all of them apart from the private sector ones. So this is some transformation. Okay. Fantastic. We're out of time. My question was not asked by anyone. I'm glad I was sitting down, hearing about the 9 months from concept note to board approval. It feels like it's complete dream world, and no one else has picked up on that. For me, it seems something, just so ambitious. And most of the time is spent doing consultations and working in country and doing feasibility studies and understanding more of the market and doing all the analysis. It's GCF can speed up, but those processes, I feel, need to be country-based. Anyway, I've said my little piece on that. It's been really fantastic to get all these insights. We will continue to interact, and well done to all of you. Thank you so much. In the background, Sandy has been doing all the amazing things to facilitate this discussion and to facilitate it. So we're really pleased that all of you joined us. We got a lot of interaction, a lot of questions and such like. I'm thrilled about all the interaction. Please continue to interact on this post, share it with your networks. We'd really appreciate that. It makes a huge difference for people to know about it. So choose reshare, put in your thoughts, and get it out into the world. We'd really appreciate that. And I guess that just remains to say a final thank you, and keep talking, get in touch with us. We'll send out information through our newsletter, and we will be in touch. Great to be here with you, and thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for the great questions.
Yeah, thanks for all those questions. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.